Are you a chiropractor with a struggling practice, having a hard time finding and keeping patients? Is your staff falling short of expectations? I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and DC Trainings has the answers that you need. So tune in now and find out how. Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Trainings. I'm Dr. Scott Sawyer, and we are kicking off Module 1. This is fantastic because this next series of 8 weeks, as we call them in DC Trainings, is specifically designed to give you what you need to build a successful team. And just like in any professional sports team, you can't win the game, you can't win the Super Bowl or the championships without everybody doing their part on the team. So in our chiropractic practices, we're going to talk today, and we're going to start our journey together in terms of implementing the key players on your team. So let me give you an example to kick this off. Let's say, because I'm the chiropractor for the Warriors basketball team, and they've won lots of NBA championships. And what happens at the beginning of the season is the coaches and the certain key team planners pick out players based on those players' statistics in the minor divisions, right? So they look at these key players that have potential to take it to the big leagues, and then they bring those players in and they start testing them and interviewing them and putting them on the court and watching certain plays. And if you're seeing where I'm going with this, obviously this is sort of a similarity to what we have in our chiropractic practices. When you hire a new CA or you bring in a new doctor, an associate doctor to your practice, you want to know that their talents, maybe they don't even know they have them yet, but their innate talents are such that those talents are going to help you take your practice to the championship. And that's what we're after, because if we don't have key players on our team that have the potential to take us to the championship, what are we playing for, right? I mean, you don't see many football games or basketball games where they're out there throwing balls around on the field or the court and nobody's keeping score. No, we're keeping score. And with DC Trainings, we do have scoring that we keep track of, and that's through the goals tracking system. So I want to make sure that we really utilize this module in a way that gives you the tools you need to place key players that are going to drive your practice in the direction that you want to take it, that are going to encompass the principles of chiropractic and utilize our chiropractic philosophy and our education processes and everything that we can do to educate the public so that they can utilize chiropractic care and, as such, enjoy optimum health and a state of being subluxation free. I'm wearing a shirt today. I'm going to come up a little bit just so you can see it, but this is a shirt that my wife got me for Christmas. It says, "The germ is nothing, the terrain is everything." And that's a quote by Louis Pasteur. Now, Louis Pasteur was the person who invented the germ theory. And if you read historical books, this was back in the 1870s. So this was even before BJ and D.D. Palmer. But in the 1870s, there was this competition going on between these two gentlemen. One was Louis Pasteur and the other one was Antoine Béchamp. And Antoine Béchamp coined the terrain theory, which says when a germ lands on the terrain, doesn't matter how strong or virulent the germ is, it's how susceptible the terrain is, our body being the terrain. Louis Pasteur had a different approach. He said, no, it's the virility or the strength of the germ that's going to determine whether or not you get the disease. Well, Louis Pasteur won the Nobel Prize, and the rest is history. Mainstream medicine is based on the germ theory and that approach to healthcare. But what a lot of people don't know is that after Louis Pasteur won the Nobel Prize, he renounced his claim. It was actually on his deathbed. He renounced his claim, and he had this quote that I just read to you. He said, actually, even though I won the Nobel Prize and I've made my career based on the germ theory, the germ is nothing, the terrain is everything. And that's where it brings us to chiropractic. When we have successful chiropractic practices and all our players are in place and we're able to serve the public with chiropractic care, We are empowering people to enhance their terrain and keep their terrain, their bodies, strong and resistant to infection, damage, stresses, basically sustain a subluxation-free lifestyle. So that's what excites me about this stuff, is that we affect and help people in such a positive way that it has a global impact in terms of how we're all able to enjoy our health. So wanted to kick us off with that today. And again, I appreciate all of you being here. I know we had our seminar last weekend, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to deliver it live. I'll have some pictures coming up for you, but I suffered a fall snowboarding, and I hit a rock a week ago, and I fractured my pelvis. So I wasn't able to stand for the day to do the seminar, but I'm healing. I went through it. It was extremely painful, but I'm on the mending side of it now and back on my feet. And so I apologize for those of you who were planning to attend that seminar live. I actually had to do it sitting down for the whole day. Anyways, let's dive into our topic today, which is the team development topic. This is going to be our next 8 weeks, right? We're going everywhere from starting from attracting applicants all the way through the performance evaluation. And this will teach you everything about finding, developing, and maintaining a winning team to help you reach your goals in chiropractic. The specific one that we're talking about today is attracting applicants. And I want to just give you a quick heads up, because what will be coming up in March when we get to our next module, module 2, which is the new patient module, then we're going to dive into really how you educate a person quickly about the benefits of not just being pain-free. So we're not trying to run just a symptom-based practice. We're going to teach you in that module, in the new patient seminar on March 23rd, we're going to teach you how to educate a person so they understand the value of maintaining a healthy nervous system, and through that being done through chiropractic care. So I'm really looking forward to that seminar. It'll be a couple months out, but I thought I would just give you the date now, and you can RSVP for that seminar online at dctrainings.com. Now, specifically for attracting applicants, ask yourself, have you ever struggled to, find a replacement CA after somebody quickly leaves your office? Now, that can be stressful, and I've been there before. So I know what it feels like when you have a great practice running, you're seeing patients, and then you walk in and you open up an envelope in your box one morning and it says, from anybody, it could be a CA, it could be an associate doctor, here's my 2 weeks notice. And you go, oh, we have so much good momentum going right now. What am I going to do? Right. And then all of a sudden here's these sleepless nights and burning the midnight oil and scrambling, right? Then, of course, what can add to that period of stress is when you're on a short timeline to find a replacement. And now the people that are coming in that you're interviewing really aren't that qualified. Have you ever had that happen, where you interview people and you walk away from the interviews going, oh man, there's really nobody here that I feel like would be a good fit for our office? Well, today I'm going to show you how to, I'll use a fishing analogy, but cast your net out and catch lots of fish, so that based on volume alone, you will have some really great diamonds in the rough that you can choose from quickly and effectively replace that person that was leaving. Okay, so we're going to dive into that together. And I'll show you the materials on the website in just a few minutes, but I want to give you this overview and timeline first, because in the CA hiring outline, you're going to choose your new CA from an abundance of applicants. So lots and lots of people that are applying for the position. So you're not stuck trying to choose somebody from a short list and then end up accepting somebody who's not really very well qualified to take your practice to the next level, or at least continue the level of practice that you've become used to, right? So here's our steps. Now, let's suppose that you have an employee who was conscientious and gave you a full month's notice before they left. Now, I know that's not always the case. Sometimes it's just 2 weeks, but the fact of it is, I mean, unless just starting in practice, which I know a couple of you on the call today are relatively new, but we've all had a CA that has left the practice. I mean, for those of us who've been in practice a while, does anybody here have the exact same CAs that they had when they started practice? So the bottom line is at some point, you're going to need to hire somebody, and basically as quickly as possible. So this is the timeline that you'll follow to make sure that you can quickly replace a team member when they've left. And this also applies to an associate doctor. I know some of you have associate doctors. I have associate doctors that work with me. So the same scenario could apply to them. Okay, so here's the essential steps for a winning team. The first is when you get that notice, you're going to go through a specific process. And this process can literally double your hiring success. So we want to print out our hiring ad. That's the first thing. When you get that notice, you print out a big stack of hiring ads. Now, I would recommend printing out at least 50, maybe even 100. In my office, because we have a pretty high volume practice, I would print out 100 of those ads so that I literally am going to blanket my town with these ads everywhere. And those ads, because they're effective, are going to attract, here's a key phrase that BJ Palmer used, Dr. BJ Palmer. He said, attract the eye to reach the mind. Okay, attract the eye to reach the mind. Now, what does that mean? When I show you the ad in just a moment, you'll see that the ad is about selling the sizzle on the steak, not the steak. It's selling the attractive benefits of the position. It's not selling the details about the position. So that's just something to keep in mind. And I'll show you how that works on the hiring ad. Part two of that is you want to have your applicant resource list. And that's something that, unless you're hiring right now, this applies to you. And if you're hiring right now, it also applies to you. But the key is that you're going to develop your applicant resource list not when you're in a panic trying to hire. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You want to make sure that applicant resource list is ready to go for down the road when the time comes that you need it. Now, I want to show you a schematic here about what type of employee you're looking for. Because as it says on the screen, A players don't stay unemployed for long. Now, if I say A player, that's like a really great employee. They work hard, they produce well, they get along great, they follow through with instruction, they're great with the customers. This is just a great A player on so many levels. As opposed to, let's define a C player. A C player is somebody who, they come to their job, they go to work, they don't really take ownership. They sometimes arrive late. They sometimes complete all their work. Sometimes they don't. They're just not really enthusiastically committed. That's a C player. Now, obviously, if you had to choose between the two as an employer or as the PDC, the primary doctor of chiropractic, you're going to be choosing A players. You want those people who are productive, they're proactive, they're detailed, they're just great, great people to work with, and they have the potential to take your practice to that winning level. Okay, so those are the A players. And what we find is that A players don't stay unemployed, right? They are ready to go, they follow through. And so when anybody is hiring, an A player is going to find a way to connect with that person and get a job, and up they go, and they're gone, they're employed. So I'll show you this graph, because what's great about chiropractic practices that we see is, we have this basic business sense, and what we're looking for is longevity with a CA, right? You don't want to have a CA that comes and works for a month and then they're gone, or they're seasonal and then they're gone. You want somebody who's going to stay with you for years to come, because they're going to get to know your patients. They're going to get to develop great relationships with your patients. They're going to see your patients' health transformed, and they're going to want to follow that path over an extended period of time and really become engaged with your practice. So as you can see on the screen, we've got these two lines, and these are long periods of employment with this small gap in between where, for whatever reason, you had to hire a new CA. Well, we have an A player who sort of follows that same trajectory, where they have a job, and you can follow my mouse on the screen, or you can just listen to the words, but they have a job that lasts for a long time. They have a short little gap of unemployment where they're looking for a new job. They find one, they land it quickly, and then they stay with that new job for a long time, right? They have a long track record of employment, or a long timeline where they're employed. And they have a little short gap where they're not employed, and then they're back on track with another job for the long term. Well, that's an A player. A C player is a little different. They have a different type of timeline. A C player means that they have a job. It's a great job, but I showed up late one day. I forgot my uniform, so they let me go, and I'm not employed again. I'm collecting unemployment. I'm okay with it. I'll get another job down the road. Then we move forward into the next section here. There's another short-term job with another gap in between, and then another short-term job and another short-term job, and they all have these gaps in between. So a C player doesn't stay employed for long. And now we have to look at this timeline as it relates to when you're hiring, right? Because in the time that you're hiring, if you look at how those lines cross, you're seeing that when you're hiring, the chances of you having your opening at the same time as an A player's opening is really, really slim. And the chances of your opening matching when an opening of a C player doesn't have a job and is looking is very, very high. So what we're looking for technically or typically to bring that in for a landing is we're looking for people who are employed, who they have a job, they are interested in advancing their career and moving up a notch. And so they come across your job and they say, wow, this looks cool. And that's the kind of stability that you're looking for. So you're actually looking for people who are currently employed, not unemployed. Now, it does happen where there's someone unemployed, that's fine. But most of the time, by and large, you're going to be finding people who are currently employed, but looking to advance their career. So that's where you want to be looking. Now, how do we look for that person? Well, that's where we go back to your applicant resource list, because, and I'll go through a couple examples here, but the ad that I gave you should be sent out everywhere, right? It should be in most of the stuff these days is online. There's not a lot in print anymore. So all of the top newspapers in your area that post local news, get an ad on there. Let people look, or let people see you in the want ads or the employment section or hiring section of that newspaper. So in Santa Cruz, where I'm at, we have two big ones. There's the Santa Cruz Sentinel, the San Jose Mercury News, and then there's a third one actually that we use, which is called the Good Times. And those are the areas that we put an ad in. Now, as far as websites, there's also a website that I want to point out, and that's santacruzjobs.com. Although you can actually take your town and basically just use the name of your town, jobs.com, because basically every city across the country has this is the same company that promotes these ads, but this is the place that you want to advertise because they get the most presence and exposure across the country in terms of your city and putting your ad out there. The last one I want to mention is called indeed.com. So indeed.com, INDEED.com, is also an important one because you can put an ad on there, you can put certain criteria in there, and they do a great job of attracting applicants to your ad. So then you'll get an email every time somebody shows an interest in your ad, and then you can reach out and connect with them. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, wait a minute, how do I connect with them, right? So let's just suppose for a moment that you have put your ad out there in such an abundance that it's out in cyberspace, it's in print, wherever it is, it's all over the place, and you're starting to see some resumes come in from that. The idea is that you want to see a huge number of resumes. Now, it's not uncommon for me when I'm hiring, and I'm not exaggerating, this is current 2023 stats, because we just hired a new CA last year, to get about 400 resumes from our hiring campaign or from our resource list. Okay, so 400 resumes. Now, you might think, well, that's insane. There's no way I'm going to review 400 resumes to try to find one CA or one doctor, right? But the point of it is you want to have such a big number of resumes that you start to filter that down to eventually make your decision. And it doesn't take an unreasonable amount of time to do that when you follow the filtering process that I'm going to show you. So let's assume for a moment that you have 400 resumes that came in via email. Well, because of the ads, there's another way I want to really stress, and that is, I said print out a bunch of these ads, put a bunch of them on your counter. Talk to your patients. Any patients that you take care of that you think, wow, this person might make a great CA, give them an ad. Let them know that you would like to potentially consider them for this position. My wife and I, whenever we're hiring, we do what we call CA shopping. We already know we have our favorite restaurants that we go to, we have our bank, we have stores that we shop at, and we know that we're going to go into those places. We already have them chosen because we know the people that work there are quality people. Banks are great, grocery stores are great. Some of the shops that we have in town, we go in there with the ad and we give them to those employees. For me, I don't really hold back. I don't mind if the manager's standing right there. I think it's a great compliment to the employee. If I walk up to the employee and the manager's standing there, I'm going to say, hey, I just want to let you know you really make a great representation here. You make a great connection with your customers. And I just want to compliment you on that. If for any reason you're ever looking for a job, here's my flyer. We're hiring right now. So if you're interested, please let us know. Love to interview you for this position. And I just hand them the flyer. So we go and we hand the flyers out in person. Restaurants is another one. Restaurants are great. We know which restaurants that are in our town that are sort of upscale, and there's, the waiters and waitresses really take pride in their work. We go into those restaurants and we pass out flyers. So get them out there and just make it a huge, okay, here we go all at once. We're going to market this position and let's see how many resumes we can get. So now let's suppose they start coming in. I don't want you to sit there for 8 hours a day for a week straight reading 400 resumes. There's a real quick screening process that we use to determine who's going to go into the qualified pile and who's going to go into the unqualified pile. And again, with 400 resumes in our example, that's a big number. So we're going to do this pretty quickly. So just start to picture that. As I talked about earlier, there's a funneling that happens, right? There's a funneling from all these resumes and people that are interested in the position, funneling it down to just one hire. Okay, so how are we going to do that? We're going to qualify the resumes in these ways. The first is a short commute to work. Okay, so when you're looking at the resumes, the first thing you're going to look at is what's their address. And you know your town just like I know my town. So in my town, I know that if they're more than about a 15-minute drive from my office, address-wise, that during traffic times, that can literally turn into an hour, right? Based on the traffics and the logistics of Santa Cruz. So what's important about that is I want to know that anybody that I'm considering for this position, that they don't have an unreasonably long commute. So they need to be within 15 minutes of my office, or else it's going to be a deal breaker. So they would then move into, if their address is too far away, they're going to move into the unqualified pile. And if they're closer within the geographics of what I'm looking for, then they move into the qualified pile. So right there, that you go through all those resumes and you just scan them very quickly. Are they close enough? Yes or no? Are they close enough? Yes or no? And you just scan that down or filter that down to your qualified and non-qualified. So that's the first one, short commute to practice. Now, think about a CA, like for example, one of the CAs in my office, we've worked together for 16 years. After 16 years, if she had, just a crazy long commute, by this time she would just be saying, it's not worth it. Like, I don't want to spend 2 hours, every day just getting to work. That's too long. So think about the long term. If somebody's going to be doing this year in and year out, or even for yourself, you probably don't have a 2-hour drive to get to work every day. So watch those commute times. That's the first one. The second one is length of past employment. Now, the rule of thumb, and you'll want to write this down, is no more than 3 jobs in 2 years. No more than 3 jobs in 2 years. That goes back to that C player schematic I showed you. If somebody's been bouncing between jobs and they're not able to hold down a job for an extended period of time, it's going to be much more challenging for you to keep an A player or keep this person and turn them into an A player. So very basic criteria. For the first filter, we're going to look at how far is their commute to the office to work, and have they had more than 3 jobs in the last 2 years? If their commute's too long or they've had more than 3 jobs in 2 years, then they go into the no pile. And we continue to filter that down. So that's the first step of qualifying the resumes. You'll be able to boil that down. So now, I mean, we might have started with 400 resumes. Right off the bat, that's going to filter it down quite a bit. Hopefully you're seeing the value of this to where you're not thinking, oh, this is too much time. Because I want to just preface something, and I didn't say this on the seminar on Saturday. I was saving this for the webinar. So because I know there's a lot of you that come to the weekly webinars, and you're on here every week. And so I always like to drop these gems on the weekly webinars, because that's sort of, that caters to those who are really following along. So if you hire the wrong person, just know that the cost of a mishire is 10 times that person's salary. Wow, right? If I hire somebody at 20 bucks an hour, it's literally going to cost me in lost productivity $200 an hour to keep that person employed. Isn't that amazing? So just remember, if a mishire costs you 10 times their salary, is it worth it to go through these steps and really find the right person? You bet it is. So that's why we do it. All right. So the last part of qualifying the resumes, because you're filtering it down, is to make a phone call. And I know that this might seem a little bit much, but it's a short phone call if you do it right. And you're going to glean really important information from the phone call that will help you further filter down to get the right person. So the resume phone call script is what you use for the first impression. Okay. So and I'm going to show you that in a moment, because we're going to go through it on the website. But let's assume, as I said, there's a qualified and there's a disqualified pile of resumes that's growing on both sides. If you make the phone call, which I'm going to show you in a minute, but if you make the phone call and it's a yes, great. Then you send them this applicant email. It's called the application meeting email. And what it says is, "Dear valued applicant, thank you for your interest. As a respected healthcare provider in the community, we're proud to offer quality services and hope you'll consider joining our team of professionals. We have reserved an interview appointment for you on the following date and time." And you put that, you just handwrite it on there. And then the next is, "We are located at such and such address." So that email goes out to the people that are in the yes pile. If it's a no, if they got disqualified, then, "Dear applicant, we want to sincerely thank you for applying for the position. Currently, the position's been filled. As a special thank you, we've enclosed a valuable coupon for you to use or share with a family member or a friend." Now, I know what you're saying. Well, wait a minute. We haven't filled the position yet. We're still interviewing. So again, that's why I was saying there's the two piles. We haven't technically sent these out yet. What we do is we just build the two piles and continue to filter until we make our decision. And then we take the entire disqualified pile and we send out the email. Now, what comes from that, though, is oftentimes when it gets to your final decision, there's probably some individuals in that no pile that they almost made it. Like, you were really excited about them. And if push came to shove, you might want to revisit interviewing them and go back, even though you ultimately ended up making another decision. They might be good for down the road, right? So that's where there becomes a third pile. So in the third pile, this was a potential person, but they just didn't quite make the cut. Those you do keep on file for future reference. That second pile that we talked about, the disqualified, they would then get this email and we would move on from there. Okay. So that's how that works. So we use this process to fill the application meeting with potential CAs. And there's a bonus. We're actually going to get lots of new patients from this process too. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to run out and have an application meeting every month to generate all your new patients for the month. No, that wouldn't be right. But as a cherry on top, when we do the application meeting and we do the hiring process in my office, and I know many of yours too, we always see a bunch of new patients that come in from that. And it's just a fun way to grow the practice. Let's jump over to our website. I'm not sure if you've seen this on our website, but I'll go back to the homepage here, because on the homepage, we just have a thank you note there. Thank you for everyone who attended our team development seminar. We look forward to continuing your training in our upcoming weekly webinars. Don't miss our next seminar, New Patient, Module 2, on March 18th. Now on this homepage, you can see all your materials, right? These are the materials for this week. We are in module 1, team development, week 1, attracting applicants, and there's all the materials. There's also a demo video that you'll want to watch. So those are all ready for you on the site. The CA hiring sequence is here for you. So this is a nice overview of the whole flow. Now today we're just talking about the first step of this, but if you're right in the middle of hiring right now, or you need to jumpstart this or have this turnkey ready, then print this CA hiring sequence out and use this as your tool to fast track it and get your new CA hired. So that's the CA hiring sequence, and it goes from the whole series, also including the materials that you would use, the emails I mentioned, all of those tools for the whole sequence. So really a great resource for you to use. I would print this out. It's a 2-sided page, but print this out, have it in your office manual binder, and just keep a copy of this for quick reference. All right, and next one is the hiring ad, which I talked about. Now, this is the one I was talking about where we're selling the sizzle on the steak, not just the steak, but the sizzle. And the sizzle is that we have a professional administrative position, excellent full-time career opportunity in a fast-paced doctor's office. The position includes marketing, public relations, health insurance benefits, profitable bonuses, paid vacations and holidays. No experience necessary, although Spanish fluency is required. That's something that you may want to add to that. You don't have to. And you can tweak this as needed. This is what I use in my office. And I'm in full-time practice just like you. So you can use it as is, or you can tweak it if you need to and use it in any way you desire. It says, due to continued growth and service in our local community, we've added a doctor's assistant position. As a first point of contact for patients, a professional, upbeat, and friendly demeanor is a must. We utilize state-of-the-art technology, including digital X-ray, paperless computer systems, and the most advanced patient care techniques on the West Coast. As such, strong organizational and multitasking skills are required with a desire to work efficiently while performing everyday tasks. Please send your resume to here, and that's it. So that's the ad, and that's the one that, like I said, we print out and we blanket that everywhere. That's the hiring ad, which you can literally just print that out and send it out. You might just white out the email and write your own in there, however you want to do it to make it easy and streamlined and turnkey, because I know when it's time to hire a person, you need to do it fast, and that this will help you do that. The next one is the applicant resource list. Now, I was telling you that about Indeed, I mentioned that's a specific one on here that you'll want to use. There's also Healthcare RC is on ours, and Healthcare RC, Healthcare Recruitment Counselors, is what that stands for. They specialize in hiring doctors. So if you're considering or moving in the direction of adding an associate doctor to your practice, that's someone I recommend. The owner's name is Dr. Brian Torchin. He's a chiropractor back east, just a great guy, and he really has a good system for finding you potential doctors to work with. Although one nice thing is you won't actually pay his fee. He would charge a one-time fee, but you only pay that fee if you hire the doctor. So you can interview as many doctors that he sends you as possible as you want to. You only pay the fee when you hire one. The next is temp agencies. Temp agencies are interesting because, and this was a change that was about 5 years ago, where the insurance parameters around that temporary agencies have to follow changed. And the way that it changed is that they are liable to some degree if their temp employee is performing patient services. What that insurance provides for is strictly reception. So in utilizing temp agencies, just make sure that if you're working with them and they have some potential applicants that they want to send to you, just make sure that they are clear, or you're clear with them, that that person will only be doing reception, like phone and scheduling, while they're under the employ of the temp agency. If you do decide to hire them, if it goes to that point and you hire them, then they're yours and you can train beyond that. But just know that the temp agency's limits only extend to reception and not assisting the doctor. Okay. And then we have educational facilities. Now, this is a question that I get often, because if you want to send your ad into a school, that means that you're potentially hiring a student. And a student is not somebody who's going to come in and say, yes, I've had less than 3 jobs in the last 2 years. Most likely they've been in school and they may have been working through school. So that's the one exception to that rule, where the less than 3 jobs in 2 years filter applies. But the key here is, if you're going to interview somebody who's in school as a potential CA, just ask them the first question, which we're going to get into in week 3, which is the panel interview. The first question is, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You want to know what their career goals are. So if once you find that out, if they say, hey, I'm just getting my GE done in school, in college, and then I'm looking for a career beyond that, then great, that could be a perfect fit for you. But if they say, well, from there, I'm going to go on to be, I'm going to become a medical doctor, I'm going to become a, psychologist or whatever, then this is more of a stepping stone. You may not want to hire that person. So that's just a key point about the schools as far as a resource. And then beyond that, we have more here. I want to mention this community action board. This is something that's local in Santa Cruz, but I know there are other community action board companies. I've listed the number here for you because they'll send an employee to work with you and they'll pay their salary. Okay, yeah, I should say that again. A lot of people say, whoa, what? I was spacing out. What did you just say? So the Community Action Board is a city-supported company, and they do placements and they offer training for careers. As part of the criteria, they'll do a placement. So they could place a CA in your office and they'll pay their salary up to, I think it's 3 months, for the first 3 months. So this could be, actually, from our standpoint as business owners or owners of chiropractic practices, they could literally pay their salary for 3 months for you while you're training them, and then they would convert over to be your full-time employee. So just a great program. It's worth noting and writing that down. Again, I don't have numbers for other areas, but if you write that number down and call them, they might have information for a similar community action board, but in your city. Okay, so that's the applicant resource list. Make sure yours is ready to go and ready to implement on a moment's notice. Here's the resume phone call. I told you I would just read this to you. It's short, it's sweet, and it's important. Hello, may I please speak with Mary, applicant? Yes, this is Mary. Hi, Mary. My name is Dr. Scott Sawyer, and I received your resume regarding our available position at Sawyer Chiropractic Group. Thank you. I was hoping you'd call. I appreciate you sending your resume and have some questions. Is this a good time? Yes, this is a good time. Thank you. First, how did you hear about our position? I found your ads through santacruzjobs.com. Great. What interested you about our position? I'm looking for a stable, long-term position. I'm looking for a stable, long-term position where I can apply my skills as a doctor's assistant. That's a good answer. Let's schedule an interview appointment. I have an opening next Tuesday at 6:15. Are you available at that time? Yes, I'm available at that time. Where are you located? Well, my assistant will email the details for your appointment to the email listed on your resume. It's important to be on time, and I look forward to meeting you. Thank you. Or if they're unqualified, it says number 2, footnote number 2, if the criteria are not met, dismiss the applicant and send the applicant decline letter. Thank you for your time. If an interview becomes available, we will be in touch, and you're done. So that's it. And that's where I want to point out the reason why that's so important is because, remember, there could be hundreds of resumes, and you don't want to be on the phone all day talking to every one of them because there's just not enough time for that. So we want this phone call to be short and sweet, and it's either a qualifier or a not qualifier. Now, what are we looking for? That's footnote number 1. Footnote number 1 says, if acceptable criteria are provided, proceed with scheduling an appointment for an interview. And I'll just show you that on my screen once again, so you have a reference for that, because in this footnote, we need to talk about what are the acceptable criteria, right? Here they are. It's 2 things. Okay, we're not going to get too complicated. It's just 2 things. One is their tone of voice. Is the tone of their voice upbeat? Is it happy? Is it, someone who you would want your patients to call and talk to on the phone? When you have a new patient calling in that's really hurting, and the voice that comes through the phone when they call is nurturing and empathetic and positive, that new patient's going to be much more likely to schedule an appointment. Whereas if the person's more brash or short or seemingly bothered, they're not going to want to schedule an appointment. So when you're making this phone call, you simply would say, you look for what is the tone of their voice? Is it a happy voice? And that's number one. Number two, what you're looking for on that phone call is their response to questions. And it's basically, it's called, there's a term for it in communication. It's called communication lag time. So if I ask you a question, how are you, John? And John says, I'm fine. How are you? That's great. That's a normal communication lag time. But if I ask you, John, what's your favorite kind of ice cream? And John goes, um, wow. I have to think about that one for a minute. Well, that's a short communication lag time, right? It's not a complicated question, but it does require some thought. So does that stretch the communication out? Well, in a busy chiropractic practice, we want short communication lag time. We want someone to be able to be asked a question. You know, I need to collect your payment today. Will that be cash, check, or credit card? Oh, credit card. Okay, good. Not, oh, let me think about that. Credit card or cash? I don't know. You know, I've been trying to get points on my card. I do have cash though. I'm just not sure which one I should use. I want to get more points. Maybe that would be better. What do you think? Right. That's a long communication lag time. So we're looking for somebody who's fairly quick in their response time. So this phone call that you're going to make, the resume phone call, is geared around just those two things. How is the voice making you feel about that person when it's coming through the phone? And what is their communication lag time? Once we've identified those two things, if they both check yes, they go into the yes pile. If they don't, they go into the no pile. Okay. And we just keep on filtering, right? That's the filtering process. So let's go back to our screen here because, as I was saying, once we know that, we can make a decision now and we can then send out the email. Thank you for your interest. It's a yes. Let's schedule them to come to the application meeting, or it's a no. Let's put them into the no pile. By going through this process, you get to choose who and how many attend the first interview. I want to leave you with this important point because next week we're going to get into the application meeting, but I want to leave you with this point because by choosing how many people come to the interview appointment, you're going to be able to determine very quickly who's going to be the right person, but you're also going to be able to weed out a lot of people that are not qualified. Okay. So I'll add this point to that too, because when you're on the resume, doing the resume phone calls, I just showed you, and you're in the part where you're saying, we have an interview appointment available next Tuesday at 6:15. What we don't want to do is make them feel like they're coming to an application meeting. We want to make sure that we call it an interview appointment. It is an interview appointment. It's also an interview appointment with 50 other people at the same time. Are we required to disclose that? No, because if we do, the chances are less that that person is going to show up. But if they understand, or if their impression is that this is a interview appointment for them, which it is, we're not being dishonest, then they're much more likely to come to it, right? The cool part is, and I'll share this with you next week, when they walk into a room, and not to toot my horn or anything, but I've done this application meeting with, our biggest was 118 people came at one time and applied for one position. And so when they walk in and say, whoa, look at all these people. Well, there's two kinds of people that are going to come to this meeting. One, the type A person is going to walk in and say, wow, look at all these people. I really want this job. And if I get it, I'm going to feel good because that means I was better than all these people. Or number two type of person is going to walk in and say, look at all these people. There's no way I have a chance of getting this job. Oh, I'm not good enough, right? Now, who is it that you want in your practice? You want I'm good enough, I'm the best, and I can do this. That's the kind of CA you want, right? So that's why we do these filters. If you think, oh, the application meeting isn't really that important, I'm just going to skip that step, you might end up with the more timid person who's not a go-getter, and then ultimately down the road, that could cost you in lost productivity in your office. So we're going to go through each of these filtering steps as a way to make sure we get the right person for the long term and we keep all A players on our teams. with these steps that I'm showing you, maybe you're not hiring right now, maybe you are, but either way, make sure these steps are in place, because when the time comes to hire, if you're not in the thick of it right now, it's going to be something that's urgent, and you want to be ready to go so that you can just dial it up and have your A player CA. And we will get into specifics later in terms of hiring a doctor. If you want to add another doctor to your practice, whether you bring in an associate to share the workload, or whether you hire an employee DC to do work for you, either way, these steps are going to apply when we get to that section of hiring a DC. So take notes, plug it in, follow along, and then you'll see how much easier it comes when you need to put the action in place. All right, so next week we will talk about the application meeting. As always, thank you so much for joining. Don't forget to check out our podcast channels. These webinars are all available on podcasts now, so you can view them and download them. I know I listen to my own podcast when I go for a run, just so I can kind of recap and make sure I made my points clear. It's a good training tool for me. But for all of you, we've had a lot of great feedback on the podcasts. And don't forget to put your results of your practice into the goals tracking system so that you can watch your success rates climb and soar. And I will look forward to talking to you next week. Thanks again for joining.
If you would like to become a member of DC Trainings, be sure to head on over to dctrainings.com to get started today.